Right. Nick Cook joined just in time. Well done.
As usual, a minute before.
Lovely. Welcome. And thank you very much if you're tuning in across LinkedIn or across YouTube.
I haven't got a notification on LinkedIn.
Have you? I have.
No, right.
I got one for sure.
How are you both this fine morning?
Yeah, good. How is it over in New York? Is it raining?
It's early. It's absolutely pouring with rain. I've been up for about 4 minutes, so I can't tell you too much. And I haven't had a coffee, but I'm here, I'm awake, and I'm ready.
Okay, good.
I've just done a podcast with James Kirkham for an hour.
What a charming man.
Yeah, he is indeed.
I've been enjoying his Friday Defected Records live parties over the last few weeks.
Yeah, as of millions and millions of other people.
As I'm sure he told you, yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. So yeah, if you're interested in that, go and check out the podcast. When are they being released, Harry? When does that all get launched?
Next week. So we've got 2 from you, which means we've got those 2 in the bank. We've got 1 from me, 2 from Frankie Hobbs, 1 from the Strat team, and then Nick Cook completes the set.
I'm recording my first one this afternoon with Danny from Thinks, and my co-host Will Hamnet he could say anything. Hilariously, the Jungle Creations PR team have asked to approve the podcast before it goes live. I think they're worried about what Will could say, which makes it all the funner.
You told them no, I assume.
No, we've had to say yes, unfortunately.
I don't get approval on this. Why do they?
No, it might be an email to Jamie Boulding. We'll see.
Yeah, we can approve the first one, but we can't do that ongoing.
Sounds like you need a co-host that isn't a liability.
Yeah, the Thinks PR team are slightly worried as well, but we'll be all right.
It'll be good. So yeah, we're launching those next week. The idea, if you don't know, is we're launching a podcast channel, which means that instead of just doing one podcast on one channel, which gets released every week, we're creating a channel that will have 5 different formats, 5 different podcasts that will be released every single week. So quite interesting, different mechanic to what we've done before, but I think it's going to be quite exciting, and different way for us to kind of show off some of our amazing employees across the world as well, who have also got fantastic broadcasting skills, as Sam Fowler showed in his not only his Cannes debut last year, but on the podcast coming up too. So quick question here let's start with Nick Cook. I mean, it is something we've talked about on a few different things, but it's from Jason Brown, sales director at Takumi, obviously in our space. Hi, Harry. Offices, would you take a different view on your office requirements move had it been post-COVID?
Yes is the answer. I
think there's an assumption there that we did the office move in the question, isn't there? You're saying,
would you take a different view on your office requirements move had it been post-COVID?
Yeah, so Fortunately, I will let you answer it, Nick. Just to clarify, fortunately, we didn't actually sign that new office. So we're actually in a situation where we still get to make that decision now. Nick, what do you think we know, but just answering the question.
Yeah, I mean, Aaron's right. We didn't take the office in the end. I think the way we view the requirement for an office has completely changed. We're thinking about not getting one big kind of central UK office post-COVID, even when everything returns to normal. I think it's unlikely that we will require everyone to be in an office every day of the week. We live all over the place. I'm also in New York, so the UK office is less relevant for the time being. But Aaron and Harry, for example, live polar opposite ends of London. And so it just doesn't, the thought of getting out of bed and commuting for an hour and a half for Aaron, I'm sure, and longer for some other people just seems insane now, given that we're able to achieve so much more at home and our personal lives are benefited. So we're thinking actually of taking 2 or 3 kind of spaces around London and potentially in New York as well, so that we can use them as really high quality meeting spaces and kind of creative spaces, but not necessarily a place where everyone will be required to go. But yeah, I mean, financially for us, it's been a godsend that we never signed that lease, even though we vlogged about the office search for about a year, which most people would assume we did actually sign a lease, but we didn't.
Yeah, I mean, it was such a long and arduous process, and something that we've done a few times before, because we've had to move office so fast and so many times due to our growth over the last 5 years. We are pretty well established when it comes to the London and New York, to be honest, office and commercial property market.
I know all the brokers in New York.
But this is going to completely turn that on its head when it comes to understanding what that looks like. Aaron, like, what do you think are the things that are going to actually change in that space? Like, when people are walking into a traditional office, be it for a client or for an agency, like, what are we going to see in a couple of years when more offices have run out of leases, like we're in a fortunate place to have done? You know, we're going to be very, very lucky and probably one of the first movers, just because of our circumstances, in order to actually change the situation. Most people are going to go back to the original office they had, but they are probably going to have to make a change after whenever their lease ends. So what do you think they look like in the long term?
I think it's just they get used for different things. I think the use of offices to just store banks of desks to shove people into, in a sort of a sardine mentality, I think will disappear. The use of offices as meeting venues for people to share ideas and to meet face to face, I still think will have a role. So I think we're going to see offices in general become meeting spaces more than working spaces. And I think people's homes will become working spaces for a lot of people. And what I would, and we will obviously, this will develop and continue to develop, but if I had to say right now, I think our policy would be along the lines of, if you haven't got a meeting to come into or a brainstorm or a client, then don't, right? Work from home, because you'll get more done by saving the 2 hours of commute every day. But if when we onboard a big client, we might have a meeting at our office where there's 10 or 12 people from the client plus 20, 25 people from our team. Like, that meeting still has to happen, right? You still need to build those connections, but maybe you do that in a slightly different way. Maybe you do that by renting a hotel and renting a room in a hotel for half a day, and you do it around that, or you go and take a games venue on and you do it somehow in there. I think people will be much more creative with what they use these venues for. But me personally, as Nick said, my desire to commute is not very, is always been low, but is much lower now. My desire to travel unnecessarily is much, much lower now. So I think those are the big things that people are going to want to cut down. The other factor is social distancing, right? Even if we all go back to offices, you will never go back to having as many people in the offices, right? It'll be a maximum of 200 square foot a person or something. It's not going to be shoved next to each other with a load of people sat. It's going to have to be 2 meters apart. So I think that's going to be very interesting. People,
the size of our London office desks finally a possible.
Yeah, but if if people who have been full in their office for the last year or so are now going to have to go virtual because they physically won't be able to get everyone in and keep social distancing. So yeah, I certainly think there's going to be disruption in just how humanity works and how we view workplaces. Tech has changed things, but working practices haven't changed for the last several hundred years. 100 years ago, you had to go into an office every day, otherwise you couldn't do anything. About 10 years ago, that changed, but we didn't really change the rules. So I think that will definitely change now.
I think what people wear is going to change massively as well. Our industry traditionally is very relaxed, and we obviously wear t-shirts and whatever we want every day. But I just can't see how can the city go back in wearing a suit and a tie every single day, having been in their pajamas for 6 months? I wonder if that's going to be a norm following as well.
Well, it's quite interesting because I was talking to a few people that do work in the city or in sort of corporate jobs over the last week, and they're almost missing that. Like they do, like, if people have worked in that industry for such a long time, and they do enjoy that part of the routine.
Are they sitting at home wearing a suit and tie?
Well, you look at the politicians, right, who are dialing into the House of Commons or to the briefings, and the same goes for the journalists. Like they're not dressing up for it. Now, obviously, that's on primetime TV, etc. But I think part of it there is still a ritual that kind of gets abided by certain corporate structures. But I completely agree with you. I believe it's complete nonsense for the everyday. Now, again, I completely understand, like what Aaron was saying about certain meetings require certain things from a space point of view. I also believe, and I know probably you're more for this than anybody, more for this than Aaron and I, but certain dress codes suit certain meetings as well. And, in the city, there is an expectation that you wear a shirt and a tie every single day, right?
Yeah, there is. I mean, I in some cases would say that members of our team should scrub up a little smarter than potentially other meetings. But I think that's just a sales tactic, right? To make sure that you're aware who you're selling to and how they might perceive you and the business. Doesn't mean wear a suit and tie necessarily.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest. I disagree. I think it's,
you're very much a hoodie man in any circumstance.
Absolutely, I think you should judge people on substance, and
I agree with that. I just think people don't. Right
now, you see a business meeting going on, and there's one person there in casual clothes, and there's 4 people in suits. I can assure you, all the people in suits work for the person in casual clothes.
Yeah.
That's reality, right? So I think that changed a while ago. I don't think people care. Even our bankers and stuff, when they come in, they're like, "Oh, take my tie off." I don't care. Come in shorts. It doesn't make any difference to me. I just don't care what people wear or what they look like. It just doesn't make any difference to me. I hope we go to that where people don't care and they get judged on substance. But I agree, people do make judgments on that. I just think they shouldn't.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Right, Aaron Shepherd, start over on the YouTube comments. Hi chaps, really enjoy the day vlog. Launch an organically grown CBD tea, and we're trying lots of different ways to drive traffic. Just wondering if you had any learnings from launching Ignite. We obviously were part of that launch in the UK. Aaron Shepherd, any thoughts? Obviously, CBD and is an interest area for you.
Yeah, I just reluctant to share too much. It's very difficult to share too much on what we actually.
No, sure, but like in terms of CBD, we've worked with quite a lot of CBD companies now. Well,
what I would say with CBD is there needs to be a differentiator, which there is for the vast majority. CBD. 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I started to see brands coming, and we thought, oh, something in this. And then, like last year, we probably got 10, 15 CBD companies a week coming to us, asking us to the point where it's like, oh, another one. So I don't think the market's as big as people thought it was, and I think it's a stopgap to something greater. However, I do think it's a positive place. I just think there's very little differentiation in it. Nobody's actually building brands, like with the exception of Ignite, but even they, I think, have struggled to get away from the pure Dan Bilzerian brand. So to build a really strong CBD brand, I think would be very, very valuable. But it's an incredibly crowded market, and it's also the audience isn't what people think it is. The number of people that think the audience is 18 to 35-year-olds, and it isn't. It's 45-year-old plus women. That's who are buying CBD, and all the brands are targeted at 25-year-olds, and it just doesn't work. Like it's 45-year-old plus women that are buying it. So my biggest bit of advice for anyone in the CBD market is target them, because that's where the sales will come from.
Yeah, I mean, from our learnings from Ignite, I mean, my initial reaction is they really, really focus, especially on launch, on building huge amount of brand equity around Dan. Obviously, a huge PR release. It's something that worked really, really well in the US. Obviously, Dan as a ambassador is relatively divisive. Even
it's
more
also a different product, remember, in the US though, because marijuana is legal there. Like what Ignite sells in the US is weed products, right? And so they lead with the weed stuff, and then CBD is sort of secondary. But because there is no legal weed here, they have to just lead with CBD. But it is a secondary product for them. So it's kind of a difficult, you've got to look at the US and the UK so differently because you've got legalization over there. And, I think that's the big issue is it's really profitable in the US because it drags people into weed. But if you don't have that option in the UK, it's more challenging to do it at scale.
Okay, Nick Cook, coming
Yes,
to you for Jersey Opars question on LinkedIn. What are your takes on working with Twitch influencers? How do we match them with brands, and what are we expecting to happen with live streaming over the next couple of years, or probably in this market, a couple of weeks?
Yeah, things are moving very quickly in that space. We start in the first kind of year and a half, we didn't really run any campaigns on Twitch, partly because we were initially a sports agency and then kind of moved into fashion lifestyle before gaming as a vertical. But in general, we're seeing live content is absolutely flying right now. We're seeing mobile usage and social usage up, but specifically YouTube and Twitch live content is absolutely through the roof. Interestingly, just in the US, when we're looking at kind of incoming briefs since the whole COVID situation started, we obviously had a sort of a decline for a bit, but sort of more than 50% of the briefs we've had, I would say, in the last 3 weeks are from gaming brands or non-gaming brands who are looking for Twitch content or just YouTube gaming content. So that is an industry that is absolutely flying right now. We have a lot of experience in that industry. I think our expertise has really kind of developed since we built out a specific gaming team. To be honest, as an individual, gaming is not my vertical, but it's been fascinating kind of not just seeing the numbers, but the kind of mechanics and creatives you're able to develop on Twitch are so unique. And just the length of live streams can just be utterly ridiculous. So how you kind of develop a brand integration is also very unique.
Use of them is changing as well, Nick, because I think over the past few years, if you were joining if you were gaming with your friends in the evening, like it's either a very close friend network or it's really about gaming. And now you're seeing, like, I've seen people, entrepreneurs, giving out their gamer tags and stuff and being like, come pitch me. VCs and stuff being like, I'm going to be on this game at this time, come find me, pitch me, right? I'm just going to be there for a couple of hours. So it's almost like a hangout situation where it's sort of come and talk to me about anything, and I just happen to be doing this, which I think is quite interesting. I
think there's also a crossover into other communities. I mean, it's still kind of gaming at its core, but you look at Mesut Ozil and Premier League footballers or influencers or talents from completely random verticals who are kind of leveraging Twitter as one of their key platforms right now. Partly because they're at home, but Ozil's been using Twitter as a kind of key comms platform, right, with his audience for years.
Twitch, not Twitter, right?
Sorry, Twitch, yeah. It's early for me. The other T.
I agree. I think what's also really interesting is how much Twitch is being used, unlike most other platforms, very much like TV, in the fact that it is programming, and people are on at 8 p.m. till 11 p.m. and that is their slot, and it creates this kind of episodic, people know when to tune in. Something we know works very well on all platforms, but Twitch really has created that behavior from its users and its creators, which I think is mainly because, like Nick touched on a minute ago, the length of time that a creator has to put aside for a Twitch stream is significant in order to make it work. And therefore, they have to block that time out and know when that time is going to come up in their diary. So they can do that in a planning aspect. And because it's live, it just works. Whereas a YouTube video is hard because you've got to limit your time on shooting, and then you've also got to understand that it might not upload at the right time. All these different things. There's loads of different aspects to getting content right to upload at the same time every single day or every single week. Whereas Twitch, you just flick a switch, exactly the same as what we're doing here on LinkedIn and YouTube at the same time. we know that we're going live at 12:30 every Friday for an hour to do this Q&A, and we do it, and it's very, very simple for us to program that. And then the same goes for the Twitch streamers. I know also lots of them are seeing a huge amount of uplift at later hours than they were seeing previously. Normally their peak time would have been at about 10 to 11 o'clock, and now their peak time has probably moved an hour, and it's between 11 and 12. And that, I think, Nick and I were discussing it last night at 2:30 a.m. in the UK. I was still up, and Nick was going to bed, and we were talking about how much different people's routines have changed because of lockdown, and how their sleeping patterns have changed, how their exercise patterns have changed, and also their entertainment patterns. And mine has elongated in the evenings because of gaming and because of content, and how much more there is to consume. So I think that's quite an interesting one when it comes to Twitch. Right, what else we got here?
How's the Goat Gaming team going? Haven't we set one up? What's the latest?
I'll be honest, Nick Cook, and I'm gonna call Sam Anderson out here. He's fluttered around with the Goat Gaming squad, but I feel like I need to push it along. There's a lot of people gaming in the Goat quarters, but we need to be pulled together in order to make the most of it. But we have been focusing on other things, so I do let him off. Okay, next question. Aaron Shepherd from Sohail Khan, account director, Black Dot Social. How are you guys finding getting new business clients and brands at the moment? Are new brands looking to work with influencers? Have you taken on new clients? Aaron Shepherd.
Yeah, we are continuing to win new clients. We are winning new clients. In April, we won about 60% of the new clients that we would have expected to have won without COVID. So we're still winning, and our existing clients are actually upping spends pretty much across the board. So we're very fortunate, but we are still winning. We've won some big deals that we hadn't spoken to 3 weeks ago. We've won some stuff that we've been in the process of 3 or 4 months that's still going ahead. We're still seeing it. It's people are looking for the right partners right now. Things aren't just going to stop. So, there will be agencies that are doing better now than they were 3 months ago. We're not doing better than we were 2 months ago, but I expect within a month we'll be back there. And we set targets at the beginning of the month, which we've gone and hit and beaten, and so we feel like we're making some pretty big progress. But absolutely, people are still winning clients. To put it in perspective, we've won. When I talk about winning work and percentage-wise, just so people have context, like we've won well over 1 million of new business this month, right? So that might be down, but we still have won over £1 million this month of new clients. There is a lot of work out there. There's a lot of brands looking to do stuff. You've just got to be you've just got to be niche, and you've got to have, really have your finger on the social and content pulse right now.
I think one other thing, sorry, Aaron, one other thing we have seen is that we win a new client, and it could be a big RFP, and their sort of immediate reaction on a couple of occasions has been, obviously we're not spending what we normally would be at the moment, so even though it's approved, we'll kind of onboard you, and then spend will kick in down the line. I think what we've seen once we kind of push back on that and we start educating those clients around, why actually influencer or social is more important than ever, we are genuinely seeing those brands kind of change their mind and start to spend with us. And then obviously they see the ROI versus other channels. So I wouldn't think you can't win new clients. But the key, I think, is once you have won them, really making sure you get stuck in straight away and try and find out what their kind of pain points are, and try and educate them quickly.
Yeah, and if at any, like, now is the time, if you're an agency, to make sure that you are absolutely on it. Like, any mistake now, you're going to get absolutely nailed for. Like, you screw something up, client's going to cancel the contract. Like, you have to understand that these are precarious times, and so if you're not at 100%, it's going to be challenging. So the first thing for us is we have to be even better than we were a month ago. The service has got to get better. The communication's got to get better. Everything. We will not give a client an excuse not to spend with us. And the other thing to add is we're not the only people seeing positive news and seeing progress. I think the vast majority of businesses are reluctant to talk about success because it's difficult, and they'll do exactly what we're doing now, caveat it. And there is obviously a caveat, but you can still, that there needs to be positivity. People need to see that things are happening. There was a big survey done in New Zealand over the last week or so around advertisers in, I think it was from DDB in New Zealand, around do consumers want people to advertise? And 97% of the respondents said that they really want their brands to advertise. And the reason they want them to advertise is it lets them know that normality will come back. If everybody stops advertising, then what is going to happen to the world, right? Whereas if everyone keeps going, you can see, right, this will come back to, we'll get some form of normality. So I just think it's really, really important to keep going.
Okay, good answers, boys. Right. Right, Joseph or Joseph Newton, do you think we will start to see B2B influencers do brand promotions on LinkedIn? And Nick Cook.
Yes.
Okay.
Harry Hugo is desperate to get one, I reckon. Have you got enough connections?
I need enough. I need a hair bleach sponsor. As you can see, it's kind of like growing up and up and up.
It is remarkable. I thought the top was actually part of that picture behind you. Yes, we do think that is going to happen. We've actually run a couple of campaigns on LinkedIn using what you would consider B2B influencers. And it is a very interesting process because these people have never been approached for brand deals before on LinkedIn for the most part. But there certainly are a lot of individuals who are obviously trying to build their personal brands, creating regular content on LinkedIn, and who have, 20,000, 30,000 plus connections. I think, anyone who uses LinkedIn regularly will see a lot of content does get a huge amount of engagement. I think it's quite inconsistent often, the level of engagement, even if you have a huge number of connections. It's not like a platform like Instagram where you can sort of gauge what the average number will be, based on the last 10 posts or whatever, average engagement rates. I think the integrations are also quite interesting because these B2B influencers are often entrepreneurs. And so, they're focusing on running their own businesses and they're not necessarily kind of looking for other brands to promote. So they're going to turn down a lot of different things they're approached with. They might not necessarily be looking for money as well, so it could be quite expensive. And they certainly don't want to be seen as kind of selling out. It's just not worth it. So I think the kind of brand integration needs to be incredibly smart. Particularly, we did a campaign on LinkedIn a while back before I left the UK for Club Wembley, which is the sort of you go to Wembley and you have a nice expensive lunch and get a ticket for the game right at the front by the tunnel. And it's a very expensive product. And obviously they're looking for not just kind of high net worth individuals, but also people who run their own businesses who can make a decision to buy corporate tickets. And actually it was a success. I don't think you can expect to drive, a great cost per click like you would for a B2C campaign. But if you're looking for, if it's a product with a very kind of high lifetime value and a very high CPA and a very specific target audience, then yeah, I think it can work. I think it'll become easier and easier as well.
For me, what's really exciting about LinkedIn is the mechanics that you can use around paid and influencers as well in combination, and how you can use more than any other channel out there right now in terms of social is how you can use the direct message functionality. The other channels, direct messages feels quite invasive, whereas on LinkedIn, it is kind of part of the dynamic of the platform. And in-mails are quite successful if generating the right message. And with one of our recent campaigns with one of our fintech clients, we generated I think it was like a 30 to 40% open rate on in-mail, but then an 82% click-through rate on the 30 or 40% open rate. That's using influencer content with the brand and then pushing it through a in-mail with content that's relevant to that person. And it was really, really successful. And I think that we've never really focused, or if we rewind sort of a year ago, we never really focused on LinkedIn as a platform so much for influencer or social content. It was very much a place that we could lead generate ourselves and win business. Obviously, since we started really taking it seriously as a brand ourselves with the vlog and the content that we create, and the three of us trying to grow our own sort of brands on there, then we've also seen the opportunity for other brands to really take advantage of that as well, and not only to create content in the same sort of light as us, but also to drive acquisition and lead generation. Aaron Shepherd, you're a passionate LinkedIn user. Talk to me about what you think the future of influencers on that platform is.
I think the platform is changing as well, right? I think a couple of years ago it was a job platform, right? That was why people joined LinkedIn, to get a job and to look for another job and stuff like that. I think it's becoming a content platform like the others that is still linked to business, but is much more about career progression, personal brand, relationship building, networking, rather than a sort of glorified Indeed. And I think 3 or 4 years ago, that's what LinkedIn was, a glorified Indeed. And now it's much more of a content platform. I still think it has a way to go on I hate the analytics, and I think we need so much more as creators on LinkedIn. But there are many things that I love about it, and I certainly believe in the longevity of LinkedIn. I don't see how it gets replaced, because it does have a niche, and people act differently on LinkedIn than they do on other platforms. We've just been sat here, we've just had to delete comments on YouTube because some people are putting some like IRA stuff and like stupid, just insane stuff that you like 3 or 4 people that it would just never happen on LinkedIn because you know who they were. And so there is a different sort of consumer interaction on LinkedIn, which is why I like it. It's if you don't like something on LinkedIn, just move past it rather than, right, I'm going to try and hurt this person or make this person look stupid, or because actually you make yourself look stupid because everyone can see what you're doing. So the fact that it's much more open on LinkedIn because it's real names and everything else, I think creates a better content platform, and that therefore you get better content out the back of it.
You're also tagged to your company, right? You're a representative.
Exactly.
Every single thing you do, you're representing someone else and your own livelihood. And therefore your risk factor to being a troll is incredibly heightened.
Those people that have just trolled on YouTube, if they did it on LinkedIn, they'd lose their jobs. So they won't do it on LinkedIn.
Right. Ali Sheikh, specifically with Goat, how are you going to look at hiring once we're out of lockdown? And generally for most companies, what do you think companies will do in regards to employment? Aaron Shepherd, I'll start with you.
Good, bad news, I think. So I'll start with the bad news. The bad news is there is going to be some real problems with unemployment when we come out of this. I think 30 to 40% of businesses / industries are going to be, changed at a rate that causes massive unemployment. I think there'll be some businesses that do really, really well and will sort of counter that. And in 5 or 10 years' time, the 30% of the economy that needs to die will have been replaced by another 30% of the economy. And so it will get back to it. But there is going to be a period of unemployment, right? We're not going to travel at the same rate as humans, at the same rate as we were. We're not going to be out and about in the same rate. So a lot of those industries are going to be in trouble. So there is going to be a supply and demand problem with employment. However, there are opportunities in certain industries. I think anyone with digital skills has just become more valuable than they were 6 months ago and should find it easier to get better jobs. So really it's about skill sets that you have, and those that do not have any digital skills and can't use a computer and can't use a phone, I don't know what they're going to do. I really don't. Those that are really good at that stuff are going to have a big advantage. We won't wait for lockdown to end to hire, to be clear. I imagine we will start hiring again within the next sort of 6 to 8 weeks. And there are certain roles that we're considering, but we're obviously moving the staff internally who maybe whose roles may be changed first, and then we'll go. But I know lots of people that are hiring right now. There are people hiring. So I think it's going to be dependent on what industry you're in and what you do. But no question, there's going to be huge unemployment. So, you know, I can't predict the future, but I imagine that you will see people go much more virtual. You see things change around, you know, I think if you're, you know, going back to Purple Goat, for example, if you look at that community, the disabled community, I think for them, this is hugely positive because it's leveled the playing field. If you no longer have to commute for an hour and a half each day, then all of a sudden they're just as competent as anybody else. And so I think you might actually bring some communities that have been disadvantaged through physical ability into the market that weren't there, but that won't help the unemployment problem. So yeah, this is there is no easy fix here. There's going to be a lot of pain for a lot of people, but some people are going to do very well. And the people that are innovating and are more tech focused are going to do better than the analog people.
Nick Cook.
I think also I just think to add to that, the recruitment industry, I think, is going to be impacted quite severely. I think any business that isn't, you know, a huge global business that would typically just use recruiters as part of the process will be looking to avoid using them and to recruit internally. The approach we've always had is to build an internal recruitment team based around Mr. Michael Starkey, who's done a great job, and really just trust in the fact that we know our own people can identify the right kind of talent, the right kind of characters, and obviously communicate the sort of Goat identity to those people. But I think that's going to be a massive shift. Like, I just can't see small and medium enterprises using recruitment companies. Obviously, areas where you've got a very specific skill or huge businesses will be okay, but I think the industry is going to be hit quite severely.
And there's obviously a huge unemployment issue right now in the US, hugely exacerbated over the last couple of weeks. How are you? Is that, are you seeing ramifications of that already through clients and things like that, or is that not quite hit?
Yeah, I mean, lots of our clients are very big companies, and so there's been a lot of uncertainty, seemingly, and I've heard about, you know, certain members of the team being furloughed, etc. But in terms of my own personal experience of it, it's predominantly just hearing on the news and various podcasts that I've been listening to, but the numbers are completely ridiculous. Sort of all-time records highs for the number of people claiming the equivalent of unemployment benefits, and yeah, it's pretty shocking, and it seems to be kind of far-reaching across so many different industries, particularly in the sort of across the industries that, you know, are based outside the major cities, and a lot of kind of blue-collar workers being just left with no option, really. I think that we're seeing how that can impact politics and the kind of the response around COVID in general. People's unwillingness to stay at home and just accept that they've lost their job. So yeah, I think it could get a bit grimmer across lots of parts of the US over the next few months. But yeah, it seems to be the unemployment issue seems to have led to kind of deeper socioeconomic issues in the US than it has in the UK so far.
Well, I think we have a much better support system in the UK, you know, a much better welfare system. We obviously have a national healthcare system. So, you know, it will hit the US harder because it's more of a capitalist society than we are. So you lose your job in America, right, that's it.
Yeah, your health insurance is tied to it. And, you know, if you did get COVID, then, you know.
Whereas in the UK, you know, within reason, the government will look after you at that. Now, not well, but you know, they don't have an attitude of in the UK, if you haven't got anything and you need help, you will get help. Whereas in the US, you haven't got anything and you need help, good luck, you know. And so I think they're going to see a deep problem, but they may come out of it quicker as well because they have to, you know. And that's why I think you see in the US this desire to get going now, because they are absolutely ruined if they don't, right? They can't run on a welfare system. So if they don't get people back to work, they haven't got a solution really. Now we haven't got a solution either because we're just borrowing money, but at least it's a short-term solution. Whereas the US is just not set up to deal with that. They've got a whole group of people they don't even classify as citizens, right? What if you're an undocumented immigrant in the US right now? Like, you've got no chance. Again, if you're an undocumented immigrant in the UK, you become an asylum seeker. So or at least you can go into that system. I can't imagine we're deporting that many people. So but it's what my advice to people would be: look at the industries that are going up. Right? This has happened throughout time where when all the steel jobs that got lost and all the coal jobs before that and everything else, like, this does happen throughout history, right? You have big industries that just get wiped out. There's huge unemployment. Other industries pop up and the employment starts to filter out again. So, it will always level itself back because that's what humans do, but it may take some time to do it.
Just on the last question from me, really, before we wrap this up, we have got a company meeting to attend to in about 5 minutes' time. So, Aaron Shepard, I'm going to come to you about what you think Boris will announce next week when it comes to exit plan. We've obviously seen a few of the different ones outlined across Europe so far in countries that have similar circumstances to the UK. We're obviously in a slightly different situation, but we are going to need some sort of clarity from a business point of view, but also from a sort of society point of view as to what's going on and what the timeline is. What are you expecting him to announce? He was very clear yesterday that he was looking at businesses as a core premise of his rollout. What do you expect that to be?
Nowhere near as much as people want it to be. I think this is going to be much, much slower. I can't see a scenario where we don't have a second wave in the winter. So if you accept that, which they all accept, right, then it means that really we're looking at how can you allow a very small amount of people to have some freedom over the next 3 or 4 months before we go back into lockdown. I think that's what we're looking at. I think you're going to see basically staged openings of, in a week, these people, this can happen, but not this. Maybe it's, you can go and see 2 other households, for example, something like that. And maybe we do that for a month. Then maybe add another 2 households. I don't know. But what I expect in 10 days' time for it to be not too dissimilar to what it is now, to be honest. And yeah, there might be some slight opening, but I think we're in this for months, not weeks.
Nick Cook, Donald Trump's obviously desperate to bring business back to as normal as he possibly can, as quickly as he possibly can. What's the feeling in New York? Obviously, incredibly heavily hit by this, with any sort of return to normality. With the US obviously pushing pretty hard for it to return faster than Europe.
Yeah, I mean, it's very easy for me to. Hey, really, it's a balancing act, right? From protect the health of those who could be directly affected and make sure that everything's locked down, and try and ensure the economy is in a decent place and everyone else isn't affected too much, essentially. And it's easy for me to sit in my apartment in Manhattan and talk about how the most important thing is that we all stay inside and focus on protecting those who could be impacted by this. But the truth is that there are so many people whose lives have been turned upside down as a result. And so it's very hard to kind of speak about the US is such a vast place and so many every state is like a different country. So it's very difficult to comment on that. I do think it feels like the approach of the government is not very unified, just based on the fact that what Trump says from a federal point of view is sort of directly contradicts what a lot of the governors are saying, and they seem to be at loggerheads. So I'm not sure that's the healthiest kind of way of operating right now. But yeah, I feel like it's going to be a messy few months. And even as a business owner in the US, I'm inclined to say that I'd be happy to kind of very slowly, conservatively open the economy back up and allow people to go back to normal. But as I say, I haven't lost my job, and in the Midwest and a family of 10 or whatever other people's situation is.
Yeah, 100%. I think I echo both your thoughts. I think it's going to be a long time. I don't think Boris is going to open up too much. I think we might see a few specific things opened up. I think parks might be moved earlier than we potentially thought, especially with the bank holiday coming up. I think they might try and appease people with that. But at the same time, I think that could massively backfire, especially in London, where everyone will flock to Hyde Park, Victoria Park, Finsbury Park, and it will just be like Bournemouth Beach in the summer. Like, it's going to be
Finsbury Park. What a place! I miss.
You miss it a lot.
Just a quick one, Harry. It's actually a question for you, but if you want to pull it up from YouTube, creativity is key. Not spelt like that.
I like it.
Yeah, so here's a scenario, guys. Your agency has been gifted a contact list of former NFLers. Their social media have huge followings, a loyal fan base, great engagement rates, but they have ugly, non-curated pages. How do you promote them to brands?
I think the first thing would be, if you have these people and have a contact, then how can you start creating content that isn't ugly and uncurated? I think in the time that we're in right now, where everyone's at home and everyone's in the same boat, I think this is a great time to create that content. I think with any sort of sports stars, the great thing about them, or any sort of celebrity really, but sports stars especially, is they have a huge amount of back catalogue content where they feature in matches or moments or memories, and they also have a fan base that remembers them for certain things, and they can hark back to that. I also believe that, we're seeing, and we touched on it earlier when we were talking about Twitch, that if it's Instagram, right? So like Instagram and Twitter, to be honest, like there's a huge opportunity for live content right now, and the NFL especially. We're in a dead period of sport, but we've just had the NFL draft, which was a huge talking point for sports fans across America and obviously across the world for people that are interested in it. And so there are huge talking points there. These players will have specific teams and fan bases and communities that they've built around them from their playing days that will have a certain opinion of them and their opinions on the draft list and also what's going to happen in the season. I think try and make them create better content. This isn't a race to try and make as much money as possible on social media. This isn't something that's going away. There's no need to flog it super hard whilst it's not very good and you're going to underprice yourself in the next 2 to 3 months. How can you use that 2 to 3 months to create better content, get them to grow their channels, and be in a position when people are really looking to invest in this as a channel, as digital and social, in 3 to 6 months' time, as it ever increases the spend, to be really nice mainstays of the NFL community, and that's kind of what I'd look to do. And something we kind of did with Nico Rosberg in the Formula One community. He started on YouTube with us and Instagram, trying not to talk about Formula One, and then we pushed him towards actually talking about Formula One, despite him not being an active athlete in that sport. And the content that where he talks about Lewis Hamilton and Vettel and the races on the reactions, are hugely outperform everything else he does. So I think get them to do what they're famous for doing. Get them to do NFL tips. The beauty of American football is you can play it in the back garden. You can teach someone how to throw a spiral on a football. You can teach that person how to one-handed catch. Like, there's so many different things that you can teach people just by playing in the garden, the same as football. So wait for it and push hard when it's right. Right, I'm very conscious of time, boys. So we are going to wrap it up here. Thank you everyone who has commented and watched on LinkedIn and on YouTube. We'll be back here next week, Friday, 12:30 to 1:30 is our slot, because then 1:30 we have a company meeting where we basically roll this into a company internal format. Not only do we present what's happened over the last week and in this instance the last month, but we also do a director's Q&A where anyone internally can ask us any questions about the business in the current bizarre scenario that we find ourselves in. But thank you very much for watching. Vlog goes out on Sunday and across all the week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday as well. And next week we'll be launching the podcast. 5 podcast episodes every single week, 5 different formats, 5 different hosting groups. It's going to be different. We're trying something new. hopefully trying to set the new normal when it comes to podcasting, as we hopefully have done with the vlog on LinkedIn. But until then, we will see you next week.
You guys.